Pemirsa, kasus dugaan genosida pemerintah China atas etnis Uyghur memasuki babak baru. Setelah pengadilan Tribunal Independen di London yang diketuai Geoffrey Nice pada 2 Desember 2021 lalu, kini The Uyghur Human Rights Project berencana melayangkan tuntutan pidana Yurisdiksi Universal di Pengadilan Provinsi Buenos Aires, Argentina. Sejumlah alat bukti dikumpulkan untuk meyakinkan majelis hakim. Begitu pula dengan sejumlah saksi bakal hadir untuk meyakinkan dunia atas kasus dugaan genosida ini. Berikut pemirsa wawancara eksklusif bersama Michael Polak, pengacara yang akan mewakili The Uyghur Human Rights Project dalam kasus ini.
The decision that we saw last week in the Uyghur Tribunal, where Sir Geoffrey Nice, Queen's Counsel, and his panel found beyond reasonable doubt that there was torture being used against the Uyghur people, crimes against humanity, and genocide in regards to acts taken to prevent births of Uyghur children, was a monumental decision for the Uyghur people. It's the first time that all the evidence that they've collected has been put before a tribunal. And that tribunal heard over 40 witnesses, expert witnesses and witnesses of fact to come to that decision. So it's a very important moment for the Uyghur people. The importance of the Uyghur Tribunal was that it was the first time that this body of evidence was considered by an expert legal panel. Now, the perfect way to judge the crimes being committed, the international crimes being committed against the Uyghur and other Turkish people in the region, would be for there to be a United Nations court or for the International Criminal Court to have jurisdiction. In regards to a United Nations court, usually this would be set up by the Security Council. And of course, those watching will know that China has a veto power. So if the Security Council tried to set up a court like they did for the former Yugoslavia or for Rwanda, China would exercise that veto straight away and close that down. Further, people may have seen that the Gambia very bravely brought a case against Myanmar for genocide and war crimes against the Rohingya people under the Genocide Convention to the International Court of Justice. The problem is, for China, they have a reservation under the Genocide Convention which stops that court from having jurisdiction. Of course, it would be great to go to these United Nations courts, but they're being blocked by China. And when that happens, people will look for other avenues for justice. One of those was the Uyghur Tribunal, and then there's what we're putting together for the World Uyghur Congress and the Uyghur Human Rights Project in regards to an application to the Argentinian courts for the use of universal jurisdiction against individuals who are involved in the persecution of the Uyghur people. The Chinese authorities for years and years have got away with the persecution of minority groups within China with very little international interest or international consequences for them. Of course, they would like that to continue. They're a powerful state. They'd like to be able to do whatever they like to individuals within their country. But that's changing. The position of the Chinese authorities in regards to what's happening to the Uyghur people needs to be examined. They denied the existence of these huge camps to begin with. And then as satellite imagery was produced by experts, and there was also order forms were found in regards to the order of mass procurement of goods needed to run these camps, and they were buying cattle prods which were used to manage the Uyghur internees in these camps. As all this evidence came out, they started to move their position. So it started with them saying there's no camps at all, and then it moved to them saying, well, these are actually re-education camps, and changing their whole position. And they changed their position in regards to numbers. Some experts said there's over 1 million Uyghurs passing through these camps or interned in these camps, and the Chinese authorities said, well, that's not true. And so they came out with that, and now they've actually admitted recently that we're looking at those kind of numbers of Uyghurs in those camps. In China, there is no effective court system. The courts in China cannot really be described as courts. There is no objective judgment. Judges make decisions based purely on what they're told by their political masters. I represent a number of Uyghurs who have family outside of China. They've been put in prison, and they've been subject to lengthy sentences or disappeared into camps because of their religion, because of their ethnicity. And they're told to choose which offence they're guilty of. There's no evidence produced. So it's not a court process, it's a purely political process. So if anyone knows about using political tools, it's the Chinese authorities. So the next step in the pursuit of justice for the Uyghur people is the use of universal jurisdiction, and we're making a criminal complaint to the courts of Argentina in Buenos Aires. Now this work will build upon the fantastic work which has been done in the past. There's an opinion from Essex Court's chambers where they set out all the evidence and they came to their conclusion. There's the work of the Uyghur Tribunal, and there'll be a United Nations report coming out in the next few weeks as well. So what we're doing is the natural progression in the search for justice. And what will happen is we'll make a criminal complaint to the courts of Argentina, and the courts in Argentina should appoint an investigating judge and investigating prosecutor to consider all the evidence. The World Uyghur Congress and the Uyghur Human Rights Project will join as a prosecuting party, which means that we can provide them with more and more evidence as to what's actually taking place. And the courts of Argentina have the power to issue arrest warrants to send the case for trial after they've investigated the case. And one of the defining moments in the court process will be when the Uyghur people are called to the court in Argentina to swear their evidence, which will be the first time this evidence has been put before an ordinary court. So that's a very exciting moment, and we believe the time is right now to take this step. There is a huge body of evidence which shows that international crimes are taking place by the Chinese authorities against the Uyghur people and other Turkish minorities like the Kazakhs and Uzbeks in the Uyghur region. We'll bring this evidence along, we'll bring live witnesses to the Argentinian court, we'll explain the case both to the court and the Argentinian people. We say the evidence is quite clear. Crimes against humanity are taking place, genocide is taking place, and torture is taking place. Under Article 118 of the Constitution of Argentina, international crimes can be prosecuted no matter where they take place. And this is the most liberal universal jurisdiction provisions in the whole world. Most other countries require some kind of link between their state and the crimes in order to exercise jurisdiction. Argentina does not. And this was developed in Argentina because of the particular history of Argentina, with the military junta they had there, who were disappearing people, torturing people, and killing people. And we think there are parallels between what happened to the Argentinian people and what's happening to the Uyghur people at the moment. And we think the Argentinian people will be able to see that as well. So Argentina gives a golden opportunity to the Uyghur people to get justice for this intense repression that they've been under. And this is really Argentina's gift to the world, is this very wide universal jurisdiction provisions which allow us to bring our case there. The aim of what we're doing in Argentina is to look at individual responsibility for international crimes. So the people we'll be looking at are people in the Uyghur region who are committing these offences. And the thing about China is that they keep lots of evidence about themselves. Lots of the evidence which is being put out by experts is not things people have stolen or found in any kind of underhand way. It's things that the Chinese authorities have actually released on the internet, on their intranet as well, showing what's actually taking place. So the Chinese authorities, in fact, collect evidence of their own wrongdoing as well. We'll be working with Gabriel Cavallo from J.C. Abogados, and he's a top criminal lawyer and human rights lawyer in Buenos Aires. He's acted in very similar cases to this, looking at international crimes in Argentina. So he's an expert on this area of law. We're collecting a very strong body of evidence to put before the court, and we will build on the work done by the Uyghur Tribunal and the United Nations report, which is coming out in the next few weeks. We'll also bring live evidence before the courts, and that's both from expert witnesses, people who've studied the region, and also those who've escaped the clutches of the Chinese authorities, so those who've experienced the torture in those camps firsthand. The evidence is clearly there that crimes against humanity and genocide is taking place, and we think the Argentinian courts will be able to see that. In regards to whether we're sure that the court in Buenos Aires will take up the case and investigate it, the way it works is we make the criminal complaint, and the court is supposed to put in place an investigating judge and an investigating prosecutor to study all the evidence and decide where the case goes. Now, we say the evidence is very strong. We'd be very surprised if they don't take up the case and they don't investigate it, because there's such a big body of evidence from all different sources, including the United Nations as well. So we think they will take up the case. What happens if they didn't take up the case is you go to the Court of Appeals. And recently, the Court of Appeals in the Rohingya case brought by Rohingya groups in Argentina for war crimes against the Rohingya people by the Myanmar authorities, the appeal court in Argentina ordered the lower court to investigate those offences. So it's quite clear that the Argentinian courts are keen to use their provisions in cases such as this. In regards to China trying to use their political influence over Argentina to shut down this case, well, it's quite clear that they try to use political force around the world to stop any criticism, and that's becoming less and less successful. But in Argentina, they have an objective, fair court system. So we're confident that when the judge looks at the evidence we put before the judge, they won't be swayed by any political pressure that China tries to place upon Argentina. We're sure they're going to try it, but we don't think they're going to be successful. Our case will be focused on the Uyghur people, crimes against humanity, genocide and torture against the Uyghur people, as well as other Muslim groups in that area, like the Kazakh people, the Uzbek people, who also suffer very similar fates to the Uyghur people. So that's what this case will be focused upon. In regards to the upcoming report from the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in regards to what's happening in the Uyghur region, we think this will strengthen what we put forward. And let's be straight about it, we think we've got the evidence already. We've had witness statements, the press have been reporting, there's a load of expert evidence about what's happening in the region. And the people in Indonesia will know what's happening to the Uyghur people. And we've seen protests in Indonesia. They know exactly what's happening to the Uyghur people because of their ethnicity and because of their religion. But the UN report will help us as well. And the Argentinian courts will know that an objective individual, an objective body has come up with that evidence. So we look forward to seeing that report, and that will form part of the case we put forward. But we're also putting forward live witness evidence. We have witnesses ready to come forward, as well as that expert evidence, which will be important for the courts in Argentina to make the right decision. I should say that we've noticed in Indonesia protests in support of the Uyghur people, which took place last March. We think it's very important for the Indonesian people to show the Uyghur people that they're not alone, that they do have support from Indonesia, from the Indonesian students, from Indonesian society. So I say thank you very much for those protests. It's very important for the Uyghur people to know they have your support. So thank you for that.